This will be the reading for the 24th of April, our Friday reading to finish out the week that we're in, and then we'll start reading some more the next week. I'm going to start on page 46. That's where we left off, so get your book there so you can follow along. I don't want you just listening. I want you to read along with me. You can even read out loud. In your home, you can read out loud, or you can read silently. Monday, November the 9th, 1942. Yesterday was Peter's birthday. He was 16. He had some nice presents, among other things, a game of Monopoly, a razor, and a lighter. Not that he smokes much. It's really just for show. The biggest surprise came from Mr. Van Dawn when, at 1 o'clock, he announced that the British had landed in Tunis, Algiers, Casablanca, and Oran. This is the beginning of the end, everyone was saying. But Churchill, the British Prime Minister, who had probably heard the same thing in England, said, "This is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning." Do you see the difference? There is certainly reason for optimism. They're all wanting the war to end so they can have their lives get back to normal. Stalingrad, the Russian town which they've already been defending for 3 months, still hasn't fallen into German hands. But return to affairs in our secret den. I must tell you something about our food supply. As you know, we have some really greedy pigs on the top floor. We get our bread from a nice baker, a friend of Kufus. We don't get so much as we used to at home, naturally, but it's sufficient. 4 ration cards have also been bought illegally. So see, they're having to buy cards so that the people that are helping them can go and get the food for them. During the war, everything had to be rationed. That means there wasn't very much, and you might go to the store, but you would only get a certain amount of bread, so much for each person in your household. So do you see how they're in hiding? So technically they don't exist out in the real world, so they had to buy some ration cards illegally so the people who are seen after them can go and take those ration cards and get food for them and bring it to them. Their price is going up all the time. It has now gone up from 27 florins to 33. And all that for a little slip of paper, printed paper. In order to have something in the house that will keep, apart from our 150 tins of vegetables, we have bought 270 pounds of dried peas and beans. Now think about that. Your mom buys maybe your mother or whoever cooks buys a plastic bag of pinto beans, and she might buy them. Sometimes when I'm just cooking for Keith and I buy a 1-pound bag, then they come in 2-pound bags, and I think 4-pound bags. So maybe if your mom has some in the pantry, go to the pantry and look at that, and think about how much 270 pounds of dried peas, like black-eyed peas perhaps, or lentils, or maybe what we call white navy beans, or red beans, would be the kind of peas and beans they had. They are not all for us. Some are for the office people. They are in sacks which hang on hooks in our little passage inside the hidden door. Owing to the weight of the contents, a few stitches in the sacks burst open. So we decided it would be better to put our winter store in the attic, and Peter was given the job of dragging it all up there. He had managed to get 5 of the 6 sacks upstairs intact, and he was just busy pulling up number 6 when the bottom seam of the sack split open and a shower, no, a positive hailstorm of brown beans came pouring down and rattled down the stairs. There were about 50 pounds in the sack, and the noise was enough to waken the dead. Downstairs, they thought the old house with all its contents were coming down on them. Thank God there were no strangers in the house. It gave Peter a moment's fright, but he was soon roaring with laughter, especially when he saw me standing at the bottom of the stairs like a little island in the middle of a sea of beans. I was entirely surrounded up to my ankles in beans. Quickly, we started to pick them up. But beans are so slippery and small that they seem to roll into all the possible and impossible corners and holes. Now, every time anyone goes downstairs, they bend down once or twice to be able to present Mrs. Van Don with a handful of beans. I'd almost forgotten to mention that Daddy is quite better again. Yours, Annie. P.S. The news has just come over the radio that Algiers has fallen to Morocco, Casablanca, and Oran have been in British hands for several days. Now we're waiting for Tunis. Thursday, the 10th of November, 1942. Dear Kitty, we want to take in an eighth person. Yes, really. We've always thought there was quite enough room and food for one more. We were only afraid of giving Kufus and Kraler more trouble. But now the appalling stories we hear about Jews are getting even worse. Daddy got hold of the two people who had to decide, and they thought it was an excellent plan. It's just as dangerous for 7 as for 8, they said, and quite rightly. When this was settled, we ran through our circle of friends trying to think of a single person who would fit in well with our family. It wasn't difficult to hit on someone. After Daddy had refused all members of the Van Don family, we chose a dentist called Albert Dussel. His wife was fortunate enough to be out of the country when the war broke out. He is known to be quiet, and so far as we and Mr. Van Don can judge from a superficial acquaintance, both families think he is a congenial person. Meep knows him too, so she will be able to make arrangements for him to join us. If he comes, he will have to sleep in my room instead of Margaret, who will use the camp bed. Yours, Annie. Thursday, the 12th of November, 1942. Dear Kitty, Dussel was awfully pleased when Meep told him that she had got a hiding place for him. She urged him to come as soon as possible, preferably Saturday. He thought that this was rather doubtful, since he had to bring his card index up to date first, see a couple of patients, and settle his accounts. Meep came to us with this news this morning. We thought it was unwise of him to put it off. All these preparations entail explanations to a number of people who we would rather keep out of it. Meep is going to ask if he can't manage to come on Saturday after all. Dussel said no. Now he is coming on Monday. I must say, I think it's pretty crazy that he doesn't jump at the proposal, whatever it is. If he were to get picked up outside, would he still be able to do his card index, settle his finances, and see his patients? Why delay then? I think it's stupid of Daddy to have given in. No other news. Yours, Annie. So she's saying, it's so dangerous for the Jewish people to be out and about. They could be picked up any time and taken to a concentration camp. She can understand why this man just doesn't say, yes, I'll come immediately. All right, Tuesday, November the 17th, 1942. Dear Kitty, Dussel has arrived. I don't know if it's Dussel or Dussel. Dussel. All went well, because these are German names, so we don't know exactly how they pronounce them. All went well. Meep had told him that he must be at a special place in front of the post office at 11 o'clock, where a man would meet him. Dussel was standing at the rendezvous, dead on time. Mr. Kufus, who knows Dussel too, went up to him and told him that the said gentleman could not come, but asked whether he would just go to Meep at the office. Kufus got into a tram and went back to the office while Dussel walked in the same direction. At 20 past 11, Dussel tapped at the office door. Meep helped him off with his coat so that the yellow star would not be seen, and took him to the private office, where Kufus engaged him in conversation until the chairwoman had gone. Then Meep went upstairs with Dussel under the pretext that the private office was needed for something, opened the swinging cupboard, and stepped inside before the eyes of the dumbfounded Dussel. He was surprised. He didn't know that cupboard would open up. We all sat around upstairs, waiting with coffee and cognac to greet the newcomer. Meep showed him into our sitting room first. He recognized our furniture at once, and he had not the remotest idea that we were there above his head. When Meep told him, he nearly passed out with surprise, but luckily Meep didn't give him much time and took him straight upstairs. Dussel sank into a chair, speechless, and looked at us all for a while, as if he really had to take it all in first. After a while, he stammered, "But, Uber, sind you not in Belgium then? Ist der Militär nicht come? The Otto, the escape is not successful?" We explained everything to him, that we had spread the story about the soldiers in the car on purpose to put people, and especially the Germans, on the wrong track, so should they try to find us. Dussel was again struck dumb by such ingenuity, and when he explored further our super practical, exquisite little secret annex, he could do nothing but gaze about him in astonishment. So he believed the story that they had let get started going around about, what had happened to them. And he was very surprised to see them in that secret place. We all had lunch together. Then he had a little nap and joined us for tea, tidied up his things a bit, which Miep had brought them beforehand, and began to feel more at home, especially when he received the following top secret annex rules. Van Don product, so they wrote those. Prospectus and guide to the secret annex. Special institution as temporary residence for Jews and such like. Open all year round. Beautiful, quiet, free froth, the woodland surroundings in the heart of Amsterdam. Can be reached by trams 13 and 17, also by car or bicycle. In special cases, also on foot, if the Germans prevent the use of transport. Board and lodging, free. Special fat-free diet. Running water in the bathroom, alas, no bath, and down various inside and outside walls. Ample storage for all types of goods. Owner, radio center, direct communication with London, New York, Tel Aviv, and numerous other stations. This appliance is only for residents' use after 6 o'clock in the evening. No stations are forbidden on the understanding that German stations are only listened to in special cases such as classical music and the like. Rest hours, 10 o'clock in the evening until 7:30 in the morning, 10:15 on Sundays. Residents may rest during the day, conditions permitting, as the directors indicate. For reasons of public security, rest hours must be strictly observed. Holidays outside the home, postponed indefinitely because they can't go out there outside of their hiding place. Use of language. Speak softly at all times, by order. All civilized languages are permitted. Therefore, no German. Lessons. 1 written shorthand lesson per week. English, French, mathematics, and history at all times. Small pets, special department. Permit is necessary. Good treatment available. Vermin expected. They're talking about insects and possibly mice are going to be expected. Meal times. Breakfast every day except Sundays and bank holidays, 9 a.m. Sundays and bank holidays, 11 a.m. approximately. Lunch, which is not very big, 1:15 p.m. to 1:45 p.m. Dinner, cold and or hot, no fixed time depending on the news broadcast. Duties. Residents must always be ready to help with office work. Baths. The wash tub is available for all residents from 9 a.m. on Sundays. The WC, which is where like their sink and their toilet would be, kitchen, private office, or main office, whichever preferred, are available. So you can take the wash tub and go in any of those places to have your bath. Alcoholic beverages, only with doctor's prescription. And yours, Annie. So those are like the rules they gave this new person to know about what he could and couldn't do in the secret annex. Thursday, the 19th of November, 1942. Dear Kitty, Dussel is a very nice man, just as we had all imagined. Of course, he thought it was all right to share my little room. Quite honestly, I'm not so keen that a stranger should use my things, but one must be prepared to make some sacrifices for a good cause. So I shall make my little offering with goodwill. If we can save someone, then everything else is of secondary importance, says Daddy, and he's absolutely right. The first day that Dussel was here, immediately asked me all sorts of questions. When does the chairwoman come? When can one use the bathroom? When is one allowed to use the laboratory? You may laugh, but these things are not so simple in a hiding place. During the day, we mustn't make any noise that might be heard downstairs. And if there's some stranger, such as the chairwoman, for example, then we have to be extra careful. I explained all this carefully to Dussel, but one thing amaze me. He is very slow on the uptake. He asks everything twice over and still doesn't seem to remember. Perhaps that will wear off in time, and it's only that he's thoroughly upset by the sudden change. Apart from that, all goes well. Dussel has told us a lot about the outside world, which we have missed for so long now. He has had very sad news. Countless friends and acquaintances have gone to a terrible fate. Evening after evening, the green and gray army lorries, that's big old trucks that they use to pick up people in, trundle past. The Germans ring at every front door to inquire if there are any Jews living in the house. If there are, then the whole family has to go at once. If they don't find any, they go on to the next house. No one has a chance of evading them unless one goes into hiding. Often they go around with lists and only ring when they know they can get a good haul. Sometimes they let them off for cash, so much per head. It seems like the slave hunts of olden times, but it's certainly no joke. It's much too tragic for that. In the evenings when it's dark, I often see rows of good, innocent people accompanied by crying children walking on and on in charge of a couple of these chaps bullied and knocked about until they almost drop. No one is spared. Old people, babies, expectant mothers, the sick, each and all join in the march of death. How fortunate that we are here, so well cared for and undisturbed. We wouldn't have to worry about all this misery were it not that we were so anxious about all those dear to us whom we can no longer help. I feel wicked, sleeping in a warm bed, while my dearest friends have been knocked down or have fallen into a gutter somewhere out in the cold night. I get frightened when I think of close friends who have now been delivered into the hands of the cruelest brutes that walk the earth, and all because they are Jews. Yours, Annie. Friday the 20th, November 1942. Dear Kitty, none of us really knows how to take it all. The news about the Jews has not really penetrated through us until now, and we thought it was best to remain as cheerful as possible. Every now and then, when Miep lets out something about what has happened to a friend, Mummy and Mrs. Van Daan always begin to cry. So Miep thinks it better not to tell us any more, but Dussel was immediately plied with questions from all sides, and the stories he told were so gruesome and dreadful that one can't get them out of one's mind. Yet we shall still have our jokes and tease each other when these horrors have faded a bit in our minds. It won't do us any good or help those outside to go on being as gloomy as we are at the moment. And what would be the object of making our secret annex into a secret annex of gloom and doom, of gloom? Must I keep thinking about those other people, whatever I am doing? And if I want to laugh about something, should I stop myself quickly and feel ashamed that I'm cheerful? Ought I then to cry the whole day long? No, I can't do that. Besides, in time, this gloom will wear off. Added to this misery, there is another, but a purely personal kind, and it pales into insignificance beside all the wretchedness I've just told you about. Still, I can't refrain from telling you that lately I've begun to feel deserted. I am surrounded by too great a void. I never used to feel like this. My fun and amusements and my girlfriends completely filled my thoughts. Now I either think about unhappy things or about myself. And at long last I have made the discovery that Daddy, although he's such a darling, still cannot take the place of my entire world of bygone days. But why do I bother you with such foolish things? I'm very ungrateful, Kitty. I know that, but it often makes my head swim if I've jumped upon too much, and then on top of that, have to think about all those other miseries. Yours, Annie. September 28th of November 1942. And I kind of want to take a minute and look back. The first entry that she wrote in her diary was in June of 1942. Hang on. I've got one hand holding my phone up. Okay, it was June 14th of 1942. So at this time, July, August, September, October, November, they're in their fourth month going into their sixth month of being in hiding and not being able to go outside and see people. Saturday, the 28th of November, 1942. Dear Kitty, We have used too much electricity, more than our ration. Result, the utmost economy and the prospect of having it cut off. No light for a fortnight. A pleasant thought that, but who knows? Perhaps it won't happen after all. It's too dark to read in the afternoons after 4 or half past. We pass the time in all sorts of crazy ways, asking riddles, physical training in the dark, talking English and French, criticizing books. But it all begins to pall in the end. Yesterday evening I discovered something new to peer through a powerful pair of field glasses into the lighted rooms of the houses at the back. In the daytime we can't even allow as much as a centimeter's chink to appear between our curtains, but it can't do any harm after dark. I never knew before that neighbors could be such interesting people. At any rate, ours are. I found one couple having a meal. One family was in the act of taking a home movie, and the dentist opposite was just attending to an old lady who was awfully scared. It was always sad about Mr. Dussel that he couldn't get on wonderfully with children, and that he could get on. It was always said about Mr. Dussel that he could get on wonderfully with children, and that he loved them all. Now he shows himself in his true colors, stodgy, old-fashioned disciplinarian and preacher of long drawn-out sermons on manners. As I have the unusual good fortune, ! I think that unusual good fortune, I think she's being very sarcastic about how she feels, to share my bedroom, alas, a small one, with his lordship, is what she's calling Mr. Dussel. And as I'm generally considered to be the most badly behaved of the 3 young people, I have a lot to put up with and have to pretend to be deaf in order to escape the old much-repeated tippings off and warnings. All this wouldn't be too bad if he wasn't such a frightful sneak, and he didn't pick on Mummy, of all people, to sneak to every time. When I've already just had a dose from him, Mummy goes over it all over again, so I get a gale aft as well as a fore. So she means she gets in trouble afterwards as well as before. Then, if I'm really lucky, I'm called on to give an account of myself to Mrs. Van Don, and then I get a veritable hurricane. So she gets in a big amount of trouble. Honestly, you needn't think it's easy to be the badly brought up central figure of a hypocritical family in hiding. When I lie in bed at night and think of the many sins and shortcomings attributed to me, I am so confused by it all that I either laugh or cry. It depends on the sort of mood I am in. Then I fall asleep with a stupid feeling of wishing to be different from what I am or from what I want to be, perhaps to behave differently from the way I want to behave or do behave. Oh, heavens above, now I'm getting you in a muddle too. Forgive me, but I don't like crossing things out, and in these days of paper shortage, we are not allowed to throw paper away. Therefore, I can only advise you not to read the last sentence again, and certainly not try to understand it, because you won't succeed anyhow. Yours, Annie. I think I'm going to try to get one more in, but if it cuts me off suddenly, we'll go back and start over Monday. Monday, December the 7th, 1942. Dear Kitty, Chanukah and St. Nicholas Day came almost together this year, just one day's difference. We didn't make much fuss about, I think that would be Hanukkah, except that's not the way that it would spell in our language. We just gave each other a few little presents, and then we had the candles, so it is Hanukkah. Because of the shortage of candles, we only had them alight for 10 minutes, but it is all right as long as you have the song. Mr. Van Don had made a wooden candlestick, so that too was all properly arranged. Saturday, the evening of St. Nicholas Day, was much more fun. Neith and Ellie had made us very inquisitive by whispering all the time with Daddy, so naturally we guessed that something was on. And so it was. At 8 o'clock, we all filed down the wooden staircase through the passage in pitch darkness. It made me shudder and wish that I was safely upstairs again, into the little dark room. There, as there are no windows, we were able to turn on a light. When that was done, Daddy opened the big cupboard. Oh, how lovely, we all cried. A large basket decorated with St. Nicholas papers stood in the corner, and on top of that was a mask of Black Peter. So these are some ways they celebrated what they call St. Nicholas Day that year. And the word that started with a C is Hanukkah, and that's what Jewish people celebrate instead of Christmas Day. We quickly took the basket upstairs with us. It was a nice little present for everyone with a suitable poem attached. I got a doll whose skirt is a bag for odds and ends. Daddy got bookends, and so on. In any case, it was a nice day, and as none of us had ever celebrated St. Nicholas, it was a good way of starting. Yours, Annie. I think I'm going to stop there before it cuts me off, and we're going to end on page 58 for this week. I hope you're enjoying reading our book. I know it has a lot of big words, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to understand, but it is for ages 10 and up, and so we're going to get through it together. We still have several weeks to read from it. I might have to assign you sometime to read some of it yourself if we start running short on time. But I'm enjoying rereading this. Of course, I read it when I was growing up, and probably read it more than one time. But I hope you're enjoying learning about what life was like for this girl during World War II, simply because she was part of, like, instead of Anglo race, she was part of a Jewish race. And those people had their own beliefs about religion, and they had their own kind of physical characteristics. And because of that, Hitler wanted to eradicate or get rid of all of them, which is, not something someone should make that choice. And he was very cruel, as we'll find out the further we go into our book. He was very cruel and very heartless to these people. I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll be reading to you again on Monday. Bye-bye.